Number 7. Kamoy Royal. In June of 2022, a woman who was kidnapped in Yonkers, New York, was rescued after sending a note to delivery workers when her abductor allowed her to order food from Grubhub. The 24-year-old woman, who was not named in the story, was being held hostage by a man she had met for the first time in person after communicating for months online. When she arrived at 32-year-old Kamoy Royal's apartment, he assaulted her and wouldn't let her leave. It was later revealed that he had grabbed the woman by her throat and threatened to kill her as he pressed a knife against her skin. He took her cell phone away from her and would only allow her to have it when ordering food. However, she came up with a way to outsmart her captor. While ordering food from the Chipper Truck Cafe, she included a note with the delivery request that basically said to bring the police along with the meal. Employees at the restaurant found the note to be unusual, so they called the owner of the establishment to see what they should do. In order to be on the safe side, they were told to comply with the request and call the authorities. When police arrived at the residence, Royal was arrested. He was charged with unlawful imprisonment, criminal possession of a weapon, strangulation, and kidnapping, along with other counts. He was also indicted for the assault of another 26-year-old woman just days before he kidnapped the victim he had met online. Number 6. Rayshawn Smith. A man from Rockford, Illinois, was arrested and charged with the murder and kidnapping of his ex-girlfriend in 2022. On July 23rd, the body of 38-year-old Ashley Harden was discovered behind a business called Echo Lab in Roscoe, which was reportedly where the woman worked. According to the Winnebago County State's Attorney Office, there were 2 live rounds found nearby, as well as some zip ties that had not been used. Police had gone out searching for Harden when she was reported missing by her son just 4 hours earlier. When authorities responded to Harden's residence that Saturday at around 3:45 a.m., the woman's son had explained that he saw his mother near a white car outside their house, but she never came back inside. While doing a quick search of the property, officials found 3 milk jugs that were filled to the brim with gasoline, one of which had been emptied onto the home. 46-year-old Rayshawn Smith, Harden's ex-boyfriend, was quickly named as a person of interest in the case. When investigators spoke with the woman's friend, Kyla Trevio, she reported that Smith had driven a wedge between Harden and her loved ones, which only made him more of a suspect to law enforcement. After examining the woman's body, they noticed there was a significant head injury, and they believed that Smith had struck Harden, but they didn't think she was shot. Surveillance footage from Echo Lab showed Smith's white Cadillac driving through the parking lot at about 3 a.m., less than an hour before police discovered her lifeless body behind the building. More evidence was revealed when Smith posted a cryptic video on his Facebook page saying, "People are going to call me crazier and wonder why I did what I did. Deception." To authorities, this seemed to be an admission of guilt, and Smith was apprehended later that morning. In his car, police recovered several zip ties, a machete, and Harden's medications. Blood was also discovered in the vehicle, believed to be Harden's. Investigators concluded that Smith had planned to burn down the woman's house with her and her son inside, but the smell of gasoline had woke them up. When Harden went outside to see where the smell was coming from, Smith forced her into his car and kept her there until he decided to kill her. Smith was consequently charged with aggravated kidnapping, aggravated unlawful restraint, and first-degree murder. He is currently being held on a $2 million bond at the Winnebago County Jail, and his sentencing has been scheduled for December 15th, 2022. Number 5. Organized kidnapping. In July of 2021, Aranza Ramos, a 28-year-old activist from Sonora, Mexico, was kidnapped from her home. Her body was found not long after. She was murdered. Aranza had spent the last 7 months of her life searching for her husband, who had also gone missing in early December of 2020. She had formed multiple volunteer groups with the main purpose of tracking her spouse down, but before she could find him, she was killed. Authorities discovered her body lying on a sidewalk in the Guaymas neighborhood of Ortiz. According to the local Mexican media, an armed group of men forced Aranza out of her home at about 10 p.m. that night. On the day she was killed, she had apparently participated in the investigation of a clandestine grave where human remains were found. The volunteer group she was part of had unearthed around 500 bodies from 300 similar graves since 2019, and perhaps the men responsible for the crimes wanted to keep her quiet. Unfortunately, more than 87,800 people have been reported missing in Mexico since 2006, when the country's battle against drug cartels was expanded by former President Felipe Calderon. For years, mass graves have been discovered by the loved ones of those who had disappeared as they began their own searches for the missing. Regarding the murder of Aranza Ramos, it doesn't seem like anyone has been arrested in connection to the crime. But it's believed that she is a victim of the needless violence committed by the hands of the vicious drug cartels who have been wreaking havoc in Mexico. Number 4. Troy Driver. An 18-year-old woman from Nevada was abducted from a Walmart parking lot in March of 2022. Her body was discovered in a grave found in a remote part of Churchill County. Naomi Irian was last seen by Walmart surveillance footage on March 12th. She was in her vehicle in the parking lot of the store when a masked man in a hooded sweatshirt entered her car and kidnapped her with the intent to kill her. The abductor was later identified as 41-year-old Troy Driver, who was found guilty of a previous murder case in 1997 in Northern California. Naomi was first reported missing by her brother, Casey Valley, when she failed to show up for work on March 12th. Her car was found 3 days later along Interstate 80, not far from the Walmart she was taken from. Naomi's grave was discovered after investigators acted on an anonymous tip, and an autopsy confirmed the remains belonged to the woman on March 30th. The following Friday, Troy was arrested in connection to Naomi's disappearance. He was charged with first-degree kidnapping, but he wasn't initially charged as being responsible for her death. However, after a thorough investigation, police found evidence that Troy had replaced the tires on his truck in an attempt to evade suspicion, destroyed Naomi's cell phone, and had abducted and shot the woman before burying her body in Churchill County. As a result, he was further charged with burglary of a motor vehicle, robbery, destruction of evidence, and murder. According to the latest updates on the case from September of 2022, Troy Driver is still waiting to be evaluated to see if he's mentally fit to stand trial. Number 3. Lucas Herber. In August of 2017, a British model was tricked into flying to Milan for a fake photo shoot. When she got there, she was kidnapped and held for 6 days before being rescued. However, there may be more to the story than meets the eye. Chloe Ayling was 20 years old when she claimed to have been abducted, but after 6 days, she and her captor, 30-year-old Lucas Herber, showed up together at the Milan consulate. Chloe stuck to her story, even after CCTV footage showed evidence of her holding Herber's hand, her alleged kidnapper. During Herber's trial, he claimed that the two of them had come up with the plan to fake Chloe's abduction in order to get her out of certain financial difficulties. But this admission of guilt didn't seem to fit Chloe's side of the story. She still accused Herber of kidnapping her and said that he even told her she would be auctioned off as a sex slave on the dark web. Chloe said she feared for her life every second she was held captive, but this was hard for the public to believe as she was doing interviews and modeling shoots throughout Herber's trial. But Chloe consistently stuck to her guns and said that her kidnapper had tried to brainwash her. He told her he was a member of Black Death, a violent organization filled with Romanian traffickers that he desperately wanted to get out of. However, in order to get out of the group and for Chloe to be released, he had to come up with 300,000 euros, $300,777 as well as give up 20 of the properties he owned. He got into Chloe's head and made her believe he was her only chance of survival, and everything he told her was a lie. While posing as a fake photographer online named Andre Lazio, Herber convinced Chloe to fly to Milan for a scam photo shoot. After keeping her hidden at a secluded farmhouse for 6 days, he planned to drop her off at the consulate and turn her in. He had effectively convinced her that he saved her life, so he told Chloe that after she was released, she would need to send him 50,000 euros, $50,129.50 US in Bitcoin. Herbert told her that she should only tell the authorities that he was her friend, at which point he thought he'd be able to walk right out of the consulate. However, after a few questions from police, the story Chloe was told to stick to began to fall apart. She couldn't tell the authorities Herbert's phone number, which made them very suspicious, and eventually the whole truth came out. Herbert was initially sentenced to 16 years in prison, but after an appeal it was reduced to only 5 years and 8 months in 2021. Number 2. Timothy Hazlett Jr. A 22-year-old black woman escaped from her kidnapper on October 7, 2022, after being held captive in a Missouri basement for weeks. The woman was only identified as TJ in court filings, but she claimed that a white man had abducted her and assaulted her repeatedly as he held her prisoner. Luckily, she was able to make her escape that day when her captor left the house to drop off his child at school. After making it out of the small room she was held in, she ran as fast as she could out of the home in Excelsior Springs. She then went door to door, trying to find someone that would help her. Finally, a family answered her pleas for help and found TJ still wearing a padlocked metal collar around her neck that was further held in place by a thick wrapping of duct tape. The family quickly called the police to report the crime, and it was clear to the authorities that the woman was held against her will for a prolonged period of time. That same day, 39-year-old Timothy Hazlett Jr., her kidnapper, was arrested and charged with assault and kidnapping. When she was interviewed by investigators, TJ also claimed that there were other girls being held captive by Hazlett that didn't make it out alive. But after searching the property, police didn't find any evidence to support this claim. Hazlett is currently being held in jail on a $500,000 bond as he awaits his trial. Number 1. Amy Regalado and Ricardo Magna. In 2021, a man and a woman were arrested in Farias, Texas, after being accused of kidnapping a victim of human trafficking that was looking for help. 34-year-old Ricardo Magna and 39-year-old Amy Regalado were charged with aggravated assault and kidnapping in connection to the crime. The 21-year-old victim was not named in the story, but he had apparently been released by his original captors in a remote part of South Texas after being smuggled across the U.S. border. He was dumped due to a perceived law enforcement threat, and he wandered for days until he came across a gas station where he approached a random man for help. Unfortunately, the stranger he thought could help him turned out to be relatives of Magna and Regalado, who were also smugglers. He called them immediately, and they came and picked him up. They began to negotiate a ransom with the man's aunt in order for him to be released in Houston. However, when they couldn't decide on a price, they took off with the woman's nephew in their car, running the woman over in the process. Authorities in Victoria County quickly took notice of the speeding vehicle and pulled the pair over. When they spotted the victim in the car, the smugglers were taken to Rosenberg Station, where they were arrested and charged for the crime. Magna and Regalado were described as the definition of evil, as they had returned a victim of human trafficking into captivity after he had finally managed to escape. The last known update on the case was in July of 2021, when the criminals were transported to Fort Bend County Jail. At the moment, it seems as though they are still waiting to go to trial. Which of these kidnapping cases did you find the most frightening? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.